Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending tonight's meeting. My name is Brad Gottschall, your Lower Paxton Township Manager. As in typical business meeting fashion, I will give a brief overview of the agenda. Tonight, the Board of Supervisors meets in joint session with the Township Authority Board to discuss issues of similar interest. Both boards will begin by hearing a presentation by Susquehanna Advisor Group on the proposed 2019 Township bond issuance and Build America bond refunding. Next, the Authority Board will take action on Resolution 19-09, providing minor language amendments to Resolution 19-02, which established the policy for the improvement to private stormwater facilities. After this, the Authority Board will take action on the proposed improvements to the private stormwater system at Nancy Drive and Sherrill Drive under the guidance of Resolution 19-09. Next, the Authority Board will review a request for assistance to investigate and repair a private stormwater facility at Hidden Lake Drive and Country Lake Drive, again per Resolution 19-09. Next, the Authority Board will consider Resolutions 19-10-01 through 19-10-08, which provide construction easements in the SC2B project, and Resolutions 19-11-01 through 19-11-03, which provide construction easements in the BC2A, B, C, and 5B project. Next, the Authority Board will receive from Mr. Weaver an update on a new pole building at the sewer operations facility. Under the Board of Supervisors portion of the meeting, the Board will award a contract for the 2019 Friendship Center HVAC rooftop unit replacement project. Finally, the Board will consider a final subdivision plan for Phase 5A of the Stray Winds Farm and a revised preliminary subdivision plan for Wilshire Estates Phase 2 before taking action on improvement guarantees and the payment of bills. Then at this point, the members of both boards appear to be seated and prepared to begin. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gottschall. We'll call this meeting of the Lower Paxton Township Board of Supervisors to order.
In the Lower Paxton Township Authority as well.
If everyone would please stand, Mr. Zimis will lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty, here we go.
At this point, the Board of Supervisors will entertain public comment on any item not on the agenda tonight. Does any member of the public wish to address the board on an item not on the agenda? Please come to the podium, and if you would be so kind as to give us your name and address.
Good evening. Thank you.
It's not on.
Let's turn the microphone.
Better? Okay.
Very good.
Thank you. I'm Linda Halseel, president of the Meadowview Village Homeowners Association. I live at 172 Meadowview Drive in Meadowview Village. I am just here to bring everybody up to date on our need for paving of our road. We have completed the revisions to the final subdivision plan for Meadowview Village, which was one of the issues that the paving was contingent on. And we are asking that we have your support as we try and move forward to get our road paved. This has been an issue. This has been an issue that we've been working on for 11, 12 years.
Where a walking path and then you decided to not have the walking path, is that the same?
That is it, correct.
Okay.
Yes. Have you heard anything, Mr. Stein?
I was in touch with John Hinkey, who's one of the principals, I'm going to say 3 or 4 months ago, to try to ascertain when they were going to do the paving, because they have the money. and they're ready to do it. And I, of course, said, well, why don't you just get it done so we don't have to keep moving on in this direction. So I believe once the spring paving season is able to start, I think they're going to get it done.
Okay.
But I have to reconnect with him and make sure that that's going to happen.
And I will do as well.
Great.
Thank you very much for your support.
What is the day? Is it like April 1st when paving can begin? I know it's coming up in the next,
55 degrees, so.
has to be 55 degrees
Well, we're getting
Yeah,
pretty close to
consistent.
that.
consistently.
Right, Jeff?
Hopefully very soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
To answer your question.
Yes, please.
Yeah, the latest information from the asphalt plants are that they're planning to reopen around April 1st. So sometime after that.
Great. Good.
April Fools.
Let's hope not. Would any other member of the public like to address the board on an item not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to board member comments. Any members of the Board of Supervisors have any comments?
Yes, I attended the Council of Government meeting last night representing the township. We had a guest speaker from FirstNet, and they have teamed up with AT&T, and they're allowing, Nick, you might want to, they're allowing our first responders, police, fire, ambulance, and paramedics. They have a deal with AT&T for $39.95 a month. Mr. Kashiba is going to get this and forward it to the fire. And also, we had another one from S&T Bank, a lady, and S&T Bank is offering the firefighters, instead of having 20% down for a new home, you would only have to have 11% down, and you would get a lower interest rate. So I will be forwarding everything to Mr. Kashiba, and he can get out to the firefighters. And then I'm sure, Mr. Klein, you know about the live auction on July the 17th through COG. And this year, instead of giving the townships, the municipalities, 80% of the profit, they're giving them 90%. So they're asking if you have any big equipment that you can come to the live auction, and then you'll be getting 90%. So if we have anything that's hanging out there, that would be a good way to get some money. So that's it.
Any other members of the Board of Supervisors have comments? Mr. Blaine, do you have?
I have no
board-
comments as an authority member. I think we're good.
Okay.
Dave, anything for you? Back to
Okay.
you.
Thank you very much. This sounds like a morning talk show or
Well,
something
it's
here.
this kind of late, except this in the evening.
We have, except we're in evening, right? We have before the Board of Supervisors approval of the minutes for the December 11th, 2018 meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of that meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve the minutes of December the 11th, 2018 as prepared and circulated.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We'll move on to our business portion, and we do have a presentation by Susquehanna Advisors Group on our proposed 2019 bond issue. Mr. Wenger, good evening.
Yes, good evening, thank you. Is the PowerPoint? Yep. Okay. As we're setting it up, just as a recap, we met in January to review the various projects that you're considering and had scheduled this night as just a kind of checkpoint to report back and make sure we're still on task and on schedule. And the short answer is yes. And so in the spirit of trying to be consistent with prior presentations, see if I do this right. There we go. We'll just start with a summary of interest rates. And again, you can see 1-month LIBOR is the red line. And so starting in early 2016, the Fed started raising short-term rates. As recently as January, they've decided to at least take a break raising short-term rates. So you can see it's leveled off there in the far right corner. Interestingly enough, 10-year Treasury rates have increased over that time frame. 10-year right now is about, went over a little over 3%, has dropped down to about 2.6. And at the same time, tax exempts have held very steady. So still a very attractive borrowing environment for municipalities. The next page is just a little closer look, shows you where the last 3 bond issues were done and where rates are currently on the far right side. So again, just being consistent with what we had presented in prior meetings. And then we were asked to just update the financing structure for the various projects. And so you'll see this is the current debt, which we've gone through several times. That's just the Friendship Center debt broken out, which is one of the kind of focus points on the next financing. This is the debt allocated to the authority. So again, most of the township's debt is actually allocated to the authority system. And then this is just an update of the project. So you can see we've added $1 million for police equipment, which is in the center of the green box. And other than that, nothing has really changed. The Friendship Center debt, assuming new money and restructuring, is shown. The bridge project, and then also the stormwater, all would be issued as a single series of bonds by the township. But for purposes of your accounting and budgeting and planning, we break them out by departmental use so that you have some idea how your budget is working relative to capital needs. And again, then the aggregate debt, assuming those projects, is on the far right side. The totals at the bottom are principal and interest. So you can see at the top we have 7.3 for stormwater, 2.3 for fire equipment, $1 million plus the restructuring for the Friendship Center debt, and then $600,000 for the police equipment upgrades. The bridge project has remained the same. This is, again, just same thing shown. There we go. And then this breaks out the Friendship Center restructuring just to show you the budget relief on the right side of the page, and then the debt service over the life of both the new money and the restructured portion of the debt. Again, all this is anticipated to be done in conjunction with the refunding, which has a call date of October 1st. So we could do it as early as the middle of the summer, but the closer we get to the call date, the more efficient the refunding is. At the moment, the Fed has taken a break from raising rates, so we don't see any need to do anything prior to probably Labor Day. On or about, give or take a week or two. So that's a brief overview. I'd be happy to go back and go into detail or answer any questions you might have. Again, this was just an update as a follow-through of the January meeting when we came up with a list of projects that you would like to finance.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Members of the board, yes, yes, Mr. Wanger, thank you for the presentation. Mr. Wanger and Mr. Verdelli were both requested to be at tonight's meeting to give this, kind of high-level overview of a bond issuance, knowing full well that this discussion is early enough so that we can start to get the boards thinking about the issuance in general. Projects that are included in Mr. Wanger's presentation tonight were given as a way to put the presentation together for purposes of again starting the discussion, knowing that once we officially choose projects and the board does or does not decide to go forward with a bond issuance, we'd have to do so and get the appropriate information and documentation to Mr. Verdelli and Mr. Wanger quite quickly. So again, this is to start discussion and start getting it before the board.
Yes, oh, go ahead. Did you have something, Gary? Yeah, a couple of these items we've had considerable discussion on. The stormwater borrowing obviously has been the subject of a significant amount of discussion. We, I think, are in agreement on the capital fund for fire equipment. I have asked Mr. Gottschall to schedule for the workshop in April a discussion of $1 million for the Friendship Center. This sort of came out of the blue. And there's been no background or information on why $1 million is needed, or whether it's an investment that is prudent to make. So before we move forward on that, we're going to, at our workshop next month, begin a considerable discussion on that front.
And then again, we don't need that information until we get much closer to the date we actually issue bonds. So you have plenty of time to decide what it is you want to do and to what extent.
Any questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, the police radios, am I right that it is federally mandated that they be updated?
That would appear to be the case. I've also asked Mr. Gottschall excuse me, to have Director Kashiba come and talk to us at the April meeting. Because again, this is an item that has not previously been presented to us. It is a very significant expenditure. We, again, may not have a choice in that it's a federally mandated expenditure. However, I personally think that it should be subjected to the budgeting process for next year because it has not been included in any of this year's budget calculations. So both the radio equipment for the police department, which is what, about $600,000, and the Friendship Center request, $1 million, are two new things. And that's a lot of money. So we need to have a very thorough discussion about that over the next couple months.
Thank you.
And if I might,
Yes, Mrs. Lindsay, you are correct.
if I might interject, to the extent that you don't have monies budgeted in this current year on new projects like the police equipment, we can structure the debt so that there is no impact on the 2019 budget, but it would start in 2020.
Well, as we look at the 2020 budget, the additional borrowing would assumedly mean additional debt service costs. And the budget is finite. We have a millage rate that personally I'm not in favor of raising in 2020. So we have to take a look at, how much debt service we can actually afford.
And again, you don't have to do all these projects in the fall. We're just suggesting that if you can, it would be optimal from a financing cost perspective to do one financing. If you're not ready and it has to happen in 2020 or 2021, you certainly can do that. It just is more expensive.
Sure.
Well, you get the advantage of the lower rates at this point in time by bundling everything together and doing it together at one time,
And only
versus
paying
spreading it out
professionals one
and taking
time.
the risk of higher rates in the future. Yeah, and the fees that are associated with it too.
Assuming you want to do the expenditure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I was just talking about just from the financial side of it all.
Sure.
But yeah, it's all up to what you guys want to do at the Board of Supervisors, obviously.
Okay, any other?
Yeah, Mr. Bradshaw, my understanding is that the police radio upgrade has more to do with the digital frequency requirements that would allow them to communicate with other agencies that are all going to be on the same frequency, so to speak.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, well, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. And Lou, you get off easy tonight. No questions for you. With that, I guess I will turn this over to Chairman Blaine for the Municipal Authority meeting.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Now we get on to the fun stuff of the evening, right? We get to talk about authority matters. And the first item of business is going to be action on Resolution 1909, amending and restating Resolution 1902, which established policy for improvements to private stormwater systems. And Mr. Weaver.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Yeah.
You have in your packet Resolution 19-09. This resolution essentially restates and amends Resolution 1902. Essentially, what we're doing with this resolution is striking the word township from sections A, B, and C. After conferring with Solicitor Stein, in the review of the resolution, Mr. Stein had advised that the township cannot implement policy jointly with the authority because the authority exclusively owns the stormwater system. So the word township has been removed from these sections. In addition, sections 5, 6, 8, and 9 have also been amended to properly outline the correct procedures for each policy criteria under sections A, B, and C. We essentially just smoothed out the language after meeting with Steve and comments from board members at the last meeting. Specifically, Mr. Ramsey had questioned section 5 about what happens if the property owner elected not to do the project. So we basically just smoothed that language out. So now it basically states that property owners who request a project would have to execute the documents. So essentially, again, The only changes were to remove the word township, smooth out the language to reference property owners who possess a private stormwater system under Section 5 have to execute the document. And then under Section 9, property owners who request a project by the authority that they would have to sign the appropriate documents. And that concludes my presentation of Resolution 19-09, and I'll be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Mr. Weaver, thank you. Does the board members have any comments
Mr.
for
Chairman?
Mr. Yes, Mr. Judd.
I guess we should just point out for the public that this is something we spoke about extensively at the February 26th authority meeting. Went through it in much more detail, and now we're just making what are relatively minor amendments.
Correct.
Any other further comments by any board members? Okay, hearing no more comments, Chair will entertain a motion on the matter. Yes, we'll give you an opportunity for public comment. Please come up to the podium. Give us your name and address.
Good evening. My name's Tim Murphy. I live at 1524 Pine Hollow Road. I apologize for not having been here at the February 26th meeting, I believe you said it was. So I do have some concerns that may have been discussed at that point in time, and if so, please point that out to me. I have specific concerns about some of the provisions in sections 5, 6, and 7 regarding the privately owned stormwater systems and the stream channels that go through private property. I want to be sure I understand this. The authority is going to pay to make corrections to faulty systems or to eroding stream banks or stream beds on private property, and the private owners will have no expenditures at all for these improvements? Am I understanding that correctly?
The property owners, when we do the work, will not own the property. We will have the rights to use that property as well as own all the infrastructure that is within that easement. So they will belong to the authority before any work is ever done.
I read the part about easements. I didn't understand that it was actually the authority taking ownership of the facility.
Yeah, it will own the facility itself, and then it will also have an easement within which to work when it has to maintain the facility as time goes by.
Okay, so the wording in there, I guess maybe I'm
Section 5. If you read
when it
the-
says that it's going to be dedicated, does that
Dedicated.
mean the ownership becomes
Yes.
that of the authority?
Correct.
Okay.
Easement dedication.
I guess I still have some reservations about that. I understand your explanation, Mr. Stein, thank you. But if someone were to come into my backyard and tell me they're going to fix the eroding stream bank that's cutting into my yard and decreasing the amount of my property, I'd be thrilled to know that they're going to do it for free.
Well,
But it's going to enhance the value of my property, so for my neighbors to be paying for that seems a little out of line.
well, we're actually required to do it because we have to eliminate a certain percentage of sedimentation from the Paxton Creek drainage basin and also the Chesapeake Bay. So we're required to do stream bank improvements
I
under
understand-
federal law.
And I understand that, and I fully support the intent. I just question the financial outcome for that property owner whose land is actually improved in value at our public expense.
Well, we're doing it for a public purpose. There may be some benefit to the property owner, but that's not the purpose of the project. The purpose of the project is to get the sedimentation out of Paxton Creek
I
and the
understand
Chesapeake
that.
Bay.
I understand it, and I fully support that intent, and I'm glad to see that that's going to be happening. Along with the idea of being dedicated and now the property of the authority, I assume that means that the authority will then take on the long-term maintenance
That's correct.
of that facility and replace as necessary.
That's correct.
Ad infinitum.
Yep. Eventually, and I can't give you a time frame, eventually the authority will probably own the entire stormwater system so that it can be properly maintained in accordance with MS4 requirements. Because no matter whether it's privately owned or publicly owned, the feds are going to hold us liable for any MS4 violations that occur, whether it's private or public. So it was felt that since that's going to happen, we might as well own the whole, as much of the system as we can so that it can be properly maintained.
Okay, and I understand that. And just one other point of clarification, please. When it talks about privately owned facilities, I assume that means not only homeowners, but also businesses? So if a business has a stormwater basin which isn't operating correctly, the authority is going to take it upon itself to take control of that facility and make the...
We have to ensure that all stormwater BMPs are working properly. If we don't, and we are subject to an inspection by EPA or DEP, we'll be fined.
Okay, so what I'm stating is true then, that businesses could have their facilities taken over and operated?
They could,
and maintained?
depending upon if they qualify for the criteria that's set forth in the resolution.
Well, the criteria itself is rather sketchy, and I was kind of entertained by that, actually, that the criteria is that you decide that it's necessary.
We
Well,
have
that
engineers.
shouldn't even be
we have,
necessary
we have,
to say that.
engineer. We have to consult with the engineer. I mean, you can't put a blanket policy out there to try to predict every scenario that's going to come down the pike. They're trying to do it using some common sense and some rationality. That you put it, the engineers will look at it. We'll see if it will contribute to, if it's deemed worthy for the public. That is to serve the stormwater needs. So you obviously can't write it to a T. You have to leave
Every
it.
project's on a case-by-case basis.
Well, I would think that in terms of criteria, there's probably more than one project in the township that needs some work, and I see on your agenda tonight you're going to address at least two. So I would think that criteria would include some means of ranking the possible projects to decide which ones are going to get you the most bang for the buck. And there's nothing in here at all that talks about that.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, to address Mr. Murphy's question, the parallel to the sanitary sewer system is pretty direct. So if you recall, the sanitary sewer system has a permit. We have an overloaded system. We have a court order to fix the sanitary sewers. As part of that, we're replacing half of the private sewers in the township. So that policy was created 20 years ago, and over time, GHD presented plans to the authority on which private sewers are going to be replaced. It's all done through sanitary sewer flow metering. On the stormwater side, this policy gives the engineer the ability to now go do those plans similarly to what GHD did. So you're correct. There's criteria established, but the work plans that you're asking for, that's going to take time for Jason and HRG to do those plans. Right now, we have a 5-year plan that was done with Raftellus as model. And that's been presented at several meetings here between the township and the authority. So there is a plan for 5 years, and that is on our webpage. And I believe it was corrected. Mrs. Lindsay had pointed out that Earl Drive was still on there. I think that's been removed. So there is a plan for 5 years. Does that answer your question?
To some extent, yes.
Okay.
And thank you for bringing up the parallel with the sanitary system.
Right.
I'm sure that when you started many years ago with the sanitary system, you found where the worst problems were and addressed those first.
Correct.
And I guess I'm asking that that same thing be done here.
It is being done right now.
They
They
have
have
the way we're handling it right now.
Pardon me?
That's the way we're handling it right now. I mean, when we created this stormwater authority, first thing we did was we said, what are the major reason why is we need to understand what are the major problems, and let's go after those major problems first. That's what's in the 5-year plan.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to take a look at that. Thank you all for your
Okay,
time.
thank you. Appreciate it. Is there any other public comments? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Steve Novakovich. I live on Meadowcrest Drive in Lower Paxton Township. And I have a question. Why did you choose to take this route for funding the private stormwater abatements rather than assessing the property owners? Because saying that you're taking ownership of it really is a distinction without a difference. The property owner still basically has full use of that part of their property. So if a property owner has a stream running through their backyard and you decide that, well, you need to put a concrete embankment around that stream, the property owner can no longer access that stream?
The property owner, as part of the easement documents, would not be able to construct anything within the easement, permanent easement area. So similarly.
How big is the easement area for a stream that would run through a piece of property?
I'll let Mr. Hines take a stab at that.
It would be solely dependent on the size of the stream and what the improvements were. Typically, the easement encompasses the area that would be necessary for the authority to come in the future and maintain whatever improvements were ultimately constructed. So, depending on the width of your stream channel, the banks, it could be 20 feet, it could be 10 feet. It's all dependent upon what the width of that stream channel is.
Thank you. So to the previous gentleman's point, that person's property value will be increased.
Again, that's not the purpose of the project.
I understand that's not the purpose of the project, but we as the public are paying for that. Why did you choose to go that route rather than assessing the property owners?
Because to the best of my knowledge, we don't have the ability to assess the property owners.
I think the problem is that we're under federal mandate, so we can't go and assess the property owner to fix that problem. It's actually a municipal problem that has to be that we have to deal with. That's why we're saying that we need to go. We need to have the ability to go onto that property through a dedication to be able to go in there and do that work.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments at this point? Yes, ma'am. Yes, yeah, if you can come up to the podium there, give us your name and address.
My name is Judith Faruqi, 6504 Carmen Court. When is this going to start, the actual document business, where it says the private stormwater system, you have to sign something, or you have to have something, okayed? When are we going to get that paper?
Well, not everybody's going to get one because obviously they're just going to be isolated projects that go on.
This is different than the sewer.
It is, yes.
Yeah. So I was just wondering, when does this start?
There's again, if you view the web page, the 5-year capital improvement plan is on there. Mr. Hines can speak more to the schedule. Jason,
Okay, because I was just wondering if it's going to be right after the sewer project, because that's going to, I'd like to know too when that's going to start, but the wording there, such as the property owner will have to ask for something, to apply for something. How do you know if you own a stormwater system? I mean, how do you know if it's your? I mean,
it's within the boundaries of your property.
Oh, so then if it's on your property, it's considered
You possess it.
your system. Okay.
Under Section 5, if you possess a private stormwater system, it's part of a stormwater management project that's required. Then
So that's where the document comes in, where you give the township or somebody
the authority.
the easement.
Correct.
Well, I have one of those things, I think, but
You have a
I
s-
think it's in the front and the back. So it could be possible.
You could have a
Water.
private stormwater
Mhm.
easement, but it may not be part of the project. I don't believe the Frukis is on the list.
Oh.
It's not.
Well, we're in that basin area that's ABC 5B. Carmen Court off Wenrick.
Oh, Carmen Court, okay.
So I was just trying to get my my calendar set up. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Any other further comments? All right. Hearing no further comments, any further board comments? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion on the matter of Resolution 1909.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve Resolution 2019-09, which amends and restates Resolution 19-02, which established policy for improvements to private stormwater management systems.
Okay. Motion's on the table by Mr. Chrisman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Judd. Any further discussion? Okay, I think we can do this by voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So carried. All right, next item of business, action on the proposed improvements to the private stormwater system at Nancy Drive and Sherrill Drive. Mr. Weaver, you're back up.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, board members, again, thank you. Excuse me, battling with a cough that's been going on for a month now. As requested by the board, staff and HRG have met with the property owners at 5006 Nancy Drive, who have been to several board meetings requesting assistance with their public safety hazard with the sinkhole in their backyard. HRG has provided some options for the board to consider this evening, including replacing the defective pipe only and monitoring the remaining pipe, replacing the defective pipe and lining the remaining pipe, and an option to relocate the pipe around the building and replacing the defective pipe. And HRG, Jason Hines is here this evening, and he can explain more of those options in his memo. I'll turn it over to Jason.
Thanks, Bill. As Mr. Weaver mentioned, we did visit the site with township and authority staff at the beginning of March. Since then, there has been some further investigations that have been performed by authority staff to more precisely and accurately locate the piece of the system that exits Nancy Drive. I believe it was revealed that that pipe that's leaving Nancy Drive towards the manhole in the back of the property at 5006 Nancy Drive does encroach to a point where it's nearly directly beneath the townhouse structure on the property. The piece of the system that exits the manhole on 5006 Nancy Drive is to a point of disrepair where it needs to be replaced. The portion of the system upstream between the inlet and the manhole does appear to be in relatively good condition based on the closed-circuit televising that was performed by authority staff. And the basis of our on-site assessment combined with the closed-circuit televising was the basis for the preparation of our memo that you received dated March 15th. When the memo was developed, we did not have the information in hand that was later ascertained to more precisely locate the pipe between the inlet and the manhole. So these options that are presented for possible future consideration on that piece of the system were made without that information. Now that we have that information, option B related to lining the pipe may not be feasible because of a bend in the system. That kind of approach to rehabbing a pipe is more appropriate when you have a straight line pipe between two structures. So that one would require some further investigation, but at this point it may not be feasible. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions that you may have.
So I take it right now, what you're recommending is to monitor the situation and just correct the issue that's down the street, right?
From a purely technical standpoint, I think that would be desirable. However, I do understand that there are other factors, other legal factors possibly to consider, which I would have to defer to probably Solicitor Stein.
Fair enough. Mr. Weaver, you're there. It looks like you have comment.
Yes, again, Steve always says I speak for him, but essentially, Mr. Stein has reported to the board before that if the board chooses to correct a Nancy Drive situation, that it's prudent that the Township Authority first take over the storm pipe that needs to be replaced. Thank you. I thought that was, excuse me. So the Nancy Drive situation, Mr. Stein has indicated before that in order to do that replacement, again, the easement would need to be dedicated to the authority as just reviewed in the prior resolution. So the property owner has requested that the authority consider this project. It does comply with the policy. Therefore, staff would recommend, if you choose the option to replace the defective area and monitor the remaining stormwater system, that you would authorize the solicitor to draft the necessary easement documents and have those executed by the property owner.
Okay. Any board member comments at this point?
What if Mr. Weaver, she doesn't sign them?
If they don't sign, they would have to do the project on their own as
I mean, I know
at
she's
their
been
own
before
expense.
us for that, but I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't anticipate that they would not sign. You know, again, the easement would just allow the authority to go in and make the necessary replacements.
I don't have an issue with it, but she needs to know that she cannot have a garden on top of it like she did before. Okay.
That's part of the easement document, that you can't put any permanent structures on top.
And this is the one where the garden is just more or less collapsed.
Right.
Well, the pipe has failed to the outfall.
Right.
Our staff TV'd the pipe from the outfall up to the manhole, and it's collapsed. Right, Jeff? Jeff knows more about it than I do.
Yes.
Right.
This is an easy answer.
We've seen lots of photos.
The outfall pipe is what's we feel is creating the problem. That we can replace.
Sounds kind of benign as we describe it, very, very cleanly here, but it's really messy, and it's a major problem.
Yeah, we will look at the manhole structure while we're replacing the pipe, and at that point, we'll have to let them know that they can't cover it.
And Jeff, was that the only issue down there on Sherrill Drive?
That is, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So, if there's no other questions from the board, then I'd ask that the board authorize the solicitor to transmit the necessary easement documents for their execution.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. Any further comments by board members? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion on the matter.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we authorize council to initiate the improvement easements to the property owner at Nancy Drive and Sherrill Drive, as
Thank you.
recommended by Mr. Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Crispin. There's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Ms. Lindsay. Any further discussion by board members? Hearing none, we'll do this by a voice acclamation. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? So carried. All right, on to township reports. Review of property owner request for assistance to investigate and repair the private stormwater system at Hidden Lake Drive and Country Lake Drive. Mr. Weaver, you are on again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have in your packet a letter from Ricky Friedman from 5838 Hidden Lake Drive. This situation is very similar to the Nancy Drive situation, where you have a pipe leaving the manhole on the property owner's backyard. The pipe has apparently failed. There's a major sinkhole there, and the pipe going to the outfall appears to be failing. At this point in time, it's not under new business for any action because there's no expenditure by the authority for any improvements. The property owner is just asking that the authority investigate what the cause of the sinkhole is, which we believe is most likely the failed pipe. So at this point, Mr. Hines has made some recommendations to Jeff and our staff to assist to excavate or expose the manhole, inspect the condition of the manhole and the pipe, and then report our findings to Jason and his firm so he can provide some recommendations to the board. Jason, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that sums it up pretty well. I don't have anything else to add.
So at this point, I just put this under township reports, and I wanted to make sure there was a consensus from the board to give permission for Public Works staff, Township Sewer Department staff, to enter the property at 5838 Hidden Lake Drive, inspect the manhole, and televise the pipe. Be happy to answer any questions.
So be it. Make it happen.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to the sanitary sewer fund. First item of business is Resolution 1910-01 to 1910-08, authorizing the acquisition of permanent and temporary construction easements in the SC2B project.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Weaver, you're doing a great job tonight.
No,
by the way.
thank you.
Keep
I'm
it
trying to
up.
move it along.
Good work.
A little under the weather, so I'm trying to get it done as quick as I can for you as well as me. You have before you tonight resolutions 19-1001 through 19-1007 for the Spring Creek 2B sanitary sewer project. As the board may recall, this is a PEMVEST project that's slated to be completed within the next 3 years following our closing of the PEMVEST loan. This is approximately a $3.5 million project. In order to complete this project, there's 7 easements needed to replace the private sewers. This is a very unique situation as these old 50, 60-year-old sewers that were made out of clay pipe have what's called a lamp hole on their property. So most property owners are familiar with a clean out. They have an actual lamp hole that were installed back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s to allow an inspection. The private property sewers are tied into this lamp hole. Obviously, the lamp holes are outdated. We need to replace the lamp hole with a manhole and then also replace their private sewer. So this is actually easements for permanent sanitary sewer easements that will be owned by the authority, not part of the private sewer. This is where they connect in with their private sewer. So in order to replace these lamp holes, we need to get onto their property and place a new manhole that would be owned by the authority where their private sewer will be connected into. That's a summary of the resolutions 19-10-01 through 07. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
That's pretty simple and straightforward. Is there any questions by board members at this time?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have 2
Sir.
questions.
Yes.
Mr. Weaver, in as much as they're asking for both permanent and temporary construction easements, do all of these contain both permanent and temporary, or are they separated here that some just require temporary as opposed to some who only have permanent?
They are all permanent. They're all temporary as well, with the exception of 01 and 03. So they can be replaced without temporary on those selective properties. But for the most part, there's permanent easements for all 7.
Okay. And then the other one is a question of clarification, because I see that on our docs in front of us on our screen, we have 7, yet on our agenda it's 8. Either A, I'm missing one, or B, it's really only 7.
Looks like it's
maybe I
only
need to
7.
Yes, my
Brad.
apologies. We
Or Mr. Weaver, whoever.
It looks like it only goes to
Could it
0
be
7.
7 rather? I mean, I see 7 there on the screen, but on my sheet it says 8.
Correct.
Okay.
I
it is
apologize.
7.
That's
no,
an,
no, no.
That's
I
an
just
error on
wanted
our part. So I'm glad you actually mentioned that because we will have to have a special authority meeting. Well, excuse me, not a special authority meeting, but we do have scheduled authority meetings every month. The engineer because is of the essence for this project. They were more focused on BC2, and now they're completing the design for Spring Creek. We did cut off number 8. It wasn't ready, but they also going to have 5 or 6 more that are potential. They weren't prepared in final form, so I recommended that they not be included in your packet this evening. But there's a very good chance we're going to be coming back to you for additional easements.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I was accurate when I made
7
the
is
motion.
correct.
Okay.
And Mr. Weaver, have the residents been notified?
They have not been notified. Once you provide authorization for Mr. Stein to acquire the easement, we will send them a letter with an easement document
Okay.
and try to acquire the easement without having to condemn it, which we normally do. Our success rate's about 90%, Steve?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further comment on resolutions 1910-01 through 1910-07? Okay, any public comment? Seeing and hearing none, Chair will entertain a motion on the matter.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve resolutions 2019-10-01 through -07, which authorizes the acquisition of permanent and temporary construction easements in the SC 2B project by council.
Mr. Chrisman, thank you very much. Is there a second to Mr. Chrisman's motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. Judd. Any further discussion? I think we do this by voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. All right, on to resolution 1911-01 to 1911-3, authorizing the acquisition of temporary construction easements for private sewers in the BC 2A, BC 5B project. Mr. Weaver again.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is pretty simple. We have 3 properties in the BC2 project that have been sold. That requires that a new temp easement be acquired from the current owner. These 3 properties were recently sold, and they are part of the project. In order to replace their private sewer, we need to get the easement. It is amazing how many properties do transfer within these projects from time to time. So you will continue to see these resolutions pop up as projects move forward. So that's pretty simple, just for a private sewer replacement resolution, which you've seen many times before. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Weaver?
That's straightforward.
Hearing no questions, any public comment? No public comment. Let's move right to a motion on the matter. Mr. Chrisman, I think you're up.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve resolutions 2019-11-01 through 03, which authorizes the acquisition of the temporary construction easements for the private sewers in BC 2A, B, and C 5B project as presented and recommended by Mr. Weaver.
Mr. Chrisman, thank you. Is there a second to Mr. Chrisman's motion?
Second.
Mr. Zumas, you jumping in there, trying to get on the docket tonight, aren't you?
I just wanted to make
There
sure
we
you
go.
didn't think I was asleep.
That's right. That's right. All right. So we got a motion and a second on the table. Any further comments? I think we do this by voice vote as well. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. All right, Mr. Weaver, can you do the township report? Can you think you can make it? Can you make it? Can you survive?
I can be as quick as Kevin
right.
Shannon in the GHD engineering report. So the pole building, I want to just provide an update to the board. As you may recall, I've been providing updates during each meeting on the status of the design. Unfortunately, we hit a little bump in our project design. We did some test pits out at the actual location of where the pole building is supposed to go, and the fill material that was placed there needed to meet a requirement of 4,000 pounds, and it did not. So at this point, since we've hit this wall, we are going to be delaying the project temporarily. We did do some other analysis at the old Authority Garage, and staff has reported back to me that the old garage is not big enough to store all the needed materials for now or the future. So the old Authority Garage is only 1,800 square feet of storage area. According to our staff, the new building would be 3,200 square feet, and that's the space that we need. The other complication is that staff keeps reminding me is that if we build the pole building at the current location, we limit any future expansion of the existing authority garage. So that made staff and mostly me very nervous to proceed or recommend the board proceed with this project until we do some further analysis. So at this point, we'll be meeting with Jeff and Jason to look at what our options are that we can have the board consider. The problem with, Jason pointed out, with expanding the current garage now, you get into architectural reviews and additional costs. So at this point, we're going to survive on the status quo, and we hope to come up with a solution to the board here within the next several months. But I was hoping to report to you tonight that we're ready to finish the design and bid the project, but we've sort of hit a wall there. So we'll keep the board updated. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Weaver? All right.
Thank you.
Hearing no more questions for Mr. Weaver, I think we're at the point of adjournment, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn so I can turn this over to my co-host, Lowman Henry.
I'll move for adjournment, Mr. Chairman.
All right. The Lower Paxton Township Authority is adjourned. Mr. Henry, you're up.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Great job.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yep.
So now we will resume the Lower Paxton Board of Supervisors meeting. And Mr. Gottschall, Mr. Weaver has been carrying, pardon the pun, all the water so far tonight. So now you are up to discuss bids for the Friendship Center HVAC rooftop unit upgrade project.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. So the township held a public bid opening on March 14th for a project which would replace two HVAC rooftop units at the Friendship Center. 7 contractors placed bids on the project. The engineer's cost in this project was $145,470. The engineer and staff recommend awarding this contract to Spots Brothers Incorporated, the lowest qualified bidder, at an amount of $107,000, subject, of course, to solicitor review, execution of agreement documents, and receipt of all other appropriate documentation.
I gather this was not a budgeted item for this year?
That is correct. This was an emergency situation in which 2 of the 14 rooftop units went down. Actually, 4 of the units went down originally, but we were able to do patch repair work on the remaining 2. But now 2 were not able to sustain patchwork, if you will, and require actual full replacement, which is the units that you see in front of you.
Has there been any discussion as to how there might be economies or cuts to the other portions of the budget to make up this $107,000 expenditure? Sorry to throw a fastball at you here, but it just occurs to me that $107,000 is a significant amount of money, and I understand it is a result of equipment that failed unexpectedly, so nobody could have anticipated that.
Sure.
However, within the budget of the Friendship Center, it would seem to me that at least some amount of that $107,000 needs to be made up.
The initial plan for this internally anyway was to put the $107,000 into the internal debt schedule for the Friendship Center. That is separate from the debt schedule that relates to bonds, particular to the Friendship Center. This is the internal debt schedule that is passed from time to time via resolution by the board. So that's kind of the Friendship Center's way of repaying the township for capital improvements that have been made over the years. So that was the intent with this particular expenditure. But if there is a desire of the board to look at current year budget as it relates to this expenditure, we'll certainly do that.
Well, I think we should, although what you're outlining is essentially we would make a loan from the general fund to the Friendship Center, and somewhere down the road, they would be expected to repay that to the general fund.
Correct. Yes, we will have to get the board to make an amendment to the resolution that currently outlines the Friendship Center's internal debt service, but that would make that possible.
Do you have a number, Brad, on the internal debt service now from the Friendship Center?
I do not I do not at hand, but I'll certainly get that.
Brad, did you say there were 14 units on the roof?
That is correct.
So I'm assuming they were all installed approximately the same time?
They were all installed at the same time. They were all actually at this point over their life expectancy. Like I had mentioned, 4 of them went down initially, but we did patchwork to get the 2 up and running, which we think will last for a period of time. But yes, you are correct.
So we can logically assume that we might be having this discussion in near months to come on the other units.
That is correct. And without getting into the weeds in terms of Mr. Henry, the chairman, had requested that we carve out time at the next workshop to really get into the weeds in Friendship Center financing, which we will do without getting too far afield. Part of a proposal in terms of a bond issuance, that $1 million, that large figure was to handle the remaining 12 units on the rooftop, which comes at a very substantial cost to the township. So we have our engineers taking a look at that, and we have a report on that. But yes, that is a part of the analysis.
We are going to need to have a very thorough discussion in April as to future capital needs with a 20-year-old building. My concern is that we're going to be finding more problems than just with HVAC units. And we need to have a discussion as to the value of continuing to invest that amount of money on top of what the township already spends on that facility. So I think this opens up a fairly wide-ranging discussion. But we'll have that discussion in April, I suppose. Any questions from the far end of the everybody seems so far away here tonight. Any questions down in that neck of the woods?
I think we've identified the fact that we will have some further discussions, which encompasses all of the financials, what their current debt service is, how long. I think it's, and again, without having those statistics, I think it's 4 or 5 years till they have their debt service paid off. I don't think it's a real long period, but nonetheless, we need to gather all the accurate data so that we can have good discussion and make good decisions.
Jason, I just had a question. Have we ever used Spots Brothers before for any HVAC?
I'm not aware of any projects in the township that they've been involved in, but HRG has experience working with them in other locations, and those projects have been successful. So we're optimistic about working with them here as well.
Where are they at? Where are they from?
I would have to go back and check.
Okay.
They are local.
Okay.
I want to say it's a West Shore based company.
Okay.
I don't know about that. Any other questions or comments from the board?
Just a question. Mr. Stein, have you reviewed this?
Yes, I have reviewed the contract documents, and they are satisfactory.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. Are you ready for motion, Mr. Chairman?
With the proviso that this is going to be reimbursed in some way, shape, or form to the general fund? Yes.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve the bid for the 2019 Friendship Center HVAC rooftop unit upgrade project as presented by Mr. Gutschall be awarded to Spots Brothers, Inc. in the amount of $107,000. Even, yes.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Judd. Any public comment? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That brings us to the final subdivision plan for Phase 5A of Stray Winds Farm, Plan 19-03. And unless she's changed dramatically, I don't see Mrs. Zerby here. Are you going to be handling this, Mr.
I will
Gutschall?
be playing Mrs. Zerby tonight, yes.
Okay, very good.
Not as well, I'm assuming, but I will try. Final subdivision plan for Phase 5A of Stray Winds Farm. This is Plan 19-03. Phase 5A of Stray Wind Farms involves a total tract of 10.091 acres to be developed in accordance with the plan. Phase 5A will contain a total of 20 single-family dwellings, 23 lots, and 2 fee simple open space lots. Lot R5 will be reserved for future phases. The site is located in the residential cluster RC zoning district and will be served by public sewer and water supply. No waivers have been requested for this plan. This plan went before the Planning Commission on March 6th, 2019 and was approved. There are 4 general comments and 4 administrative comments that will need to be addressed before plan recording. Lauren Kelly and Matt Fisher from RJ Fisher Engineers are here this evening to address any questions the board may have relative to the plan.
Very good. Good evening.
Like you said, I'm Lauren Kelly from RJ Fisher. This is Stray Winds Farms 5A. It's the first phase of Stray Winds that is west of Crumsville Road.
Your microphone, please.
Maybe she needs to move it down a little.
Is that better? Yeah. So too short.
There we go.
This is the first phase of Stray Winds that's west of Crumbs Mill Road. Like he said, it's a 10.09 acre tract with 20 single-family dwelling unit lots on it. We are requesting no waivers for this plan. We have received comments from the township, from the county, from CHG, and from the police department, and have no issue addressing any of these comments as they stand. If you guys have any questions, feel free.
Board members?
Looks pretty straightforward to me.
Wow. Any public question or comment? You are getting off very easily tonight.
That's fine with me.
Well, with that, would any member of the board like to make a motion?
Okay.
I have a question before you.
Please come to the podium to pose the question, sir.
I was trying to bring up the whole plan.
Again, I'm Steve Novakovich. I live on Meadowcrest, which exits directly across Colonial Road from the entrance to Stray Winds. Are there any plans by the township to do anything about the traffic in that area? The only thing that's been done to mitigate anything has been to eliminate a left-hand turn into my street or a left-hand turn into McIntosh. We're building all over the township, in fact, not just this area, and we're doing nothing to increase infrastructure. Traffic in that area has become next to untenable. With the modifications you've made to the traffic lights on Devonshire Road and 22, it has caused a chain reaction of traffic all up and down Devonshire. You hold all of those cars at the intersection of 22, it gets all backed up all the way past Giant towards Costco. Then when that traffic releases, now you have a backup at the stop sign near the Turkey Hill, which continues to a back up to the light on Devonshire. It's a mess.
Interesting you would bring that up because we have had discussions about the timing of the traffic signals on 22 and their impact on north-south transportation. Mr. Godshall and members of staff have been meeting to determine what we can do about it. So we are very much aware of the problem, and we are investigating what we as a township can do relative to the fact that 22 and Colonial Road are state roads. So we're trying to find out what it is we as a township can do to address some of these. So yes, we are aware of that problem.
Thank you.
Thank you for commenting. Would any other member of the public, if not,
I'd like to address.
do you have, Mr. Chrisman, would you?
I was able to
Do
bring up
you
my
have a
system.
question or two?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Do you have the documents in front of you? Okay, because I need to ask you some questions if needed to be recorded.
Okay.
Okay. There are 4 administrative items that have to be addressed. Do you have those in front of you?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, first of all, are you able to speak on behalf of the applicant?
Yes.
Okay. With that in mind, there are 4 administrative items. My question to you is, have all of the items on that list of 4 been completed, or will they be completed in a timely fashion acceptable to the township staff?
Yes, they will.
All right. There are 4 general comments, and specifically item 4, where there are 19 comments stated from Jason Hines from HRG. Same question, and I'll need a response. Are all of the items in 1 through 3 and item 4, which is the letter dated February 20th, 2019, and the 19 comments, that they have all been completed or will be completed in a time acceptable to the township officials?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm ready when you are, Mr. Chairman.
Please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve the final subdivision plan for Phase 5A of Stray Winds Farm, Plan 2019-03, with the 4 listed administrative items that they will have been completed or will be completed in acceptable fashion to the township officials, and the 4 general comments, and specifically item 4, which is the memo dated February the 28th, 2019 from HRG under the signature of Jason Hines, that they too will either be completed or will be completed in an acceptable manner to the township officials.
So moved. We will not repeat the motion.
Thank you.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any additional board comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
There we go. Thank you very much. That brings us to the revised preliminary subdivision plan for Wilshire Estates Phase 2, Plan 19-02. The stand-in for Mrs. Zerby.
Yes, sir. Members of the board, the revised preliminary subdivision plan, Plan 19-02 for Wilshire Estates Phase 2 will consist of 56.64 acres to be developed in accordance with the plan. Phase 2 will contain a total of 60 lots and 55 dwelling units consisting of single-family detached homes with 2 open space lots. The site is located in the R1 low-density residential zoning district and will be served by public water and water supply. No new waivers have been requested for this plan. This plan went before the Planning Commission on February 6th, 2019, and was approved. This plan comes to the board with an updated memo from Jason Hines, dated 3/19, and revised memo reduces the administrative comments to 5, and there is 1 general comment that will need to be satisfied prior to recording. Josh Hoffman from Snyder and Secrecy Associates is here to address any board questions.
Having a little bit of a problem with the zoom in. Where exactly is this located?
On the way out to Costco's,
Oh, okay. Okay. I know where you mean.
right off of Windsor.
That's what I thought, but I wasn't sure. Good evening.
Good evening. Josh Hoffman with Snyder Security and Associates. Civil engineer for the project, representing Minot and Company. As Mr. Gutschall said, we've we've received all the comments. We've responded to the comments, and we're before the Planning Commission. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have regarding any remaining comments.
Any questions?
Only the same series of questions I've had before, and you're going to need to respond to them so they can be memorialized in the minutes of tonight's meeting. So I assume you have the comments in front of you, or at least you can look at the screen if you're... Okay, there are 4 administrative comments. And again, I will ask you, first of all, are you able to speak on behalf of the applicant?
Yes, I am.
Okay. There are 4 administrative comments. Have all of those comments been addressed and completed or will be completed in a fashion acceptable to township staff?
Yes, they will be.
There are 5 general comments, and specifically number 3, which has to do with the 44 comments as stated on the letter dated January 31st from Jason Hines, HRG. I did hear earlier that many of those have been completed, but again, this is still applicable since this is an add-on, that you will in fact have completed all 5 general comments, and specifically item number 3 with the 44 comments, that they either have been completed or will be completed in a fashion acceptable to township staff.
Yes, they will be.
Okay. With that, any other comments?
Would you like to make a motion?
Absolutely. Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve the revised preliminary subdivision plan for Wilshire Estates Phase 2, which is Plan 2019-02, with the 4 administrative comments as agreed upon by the applicant, and the 5 general comments, specifically number 3, with the letter from HRG under the signature of Jason Hines for 44 comments, again, that they have been completed or will be completed in a manner acceptable to the township staff.
So moved. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any additional board member questions or comments? Any public questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. There you go, sir.
Thank you very much.
That will bring us to the improvement guarantees, of which we have 3, I believe.
Correct.
All of which appear to be fairly routine. Any questions? Is there a motion?
I do have a question. Brad, is there any, and maybe you don't know, is there any particular reason on the escrow account why the change? Is it simply a timing, or the amount has changed that the escrow needed to be changed?
I
don't
cannot
know.
provide comment on, yeah, I
That's
apologize.
right, you can check on it, let me know. That won't change the motion, but I was just curious.
Care to make a motion?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve the 3 improvement guarantees, 1 with the extension, 1 brand new one, and 1 change of escrow.
So moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That brings us to the payment of bills for Lower Paxton Township and the Lower Paxton Township Authority. Madam Treasurer?
Yes, I'll make a motion. We pay the bills of Lower Paxton Township and Lower Paxton Township Authority.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify. Uh-oh.
Let the minutes record Mr. Judd made this.
I was going to say, I heard a different voice than usual.
Yes, that was
Mr.
my
Judd,
fault.
do you second that motion? Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any additional comments or announcements?
I have one, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to publicly offer congratulations to Anmar Alamary and Carlos Dennis, along with their instructor, Andrew Wagner from Dauphin County Technical School, for finishing in 3rd place in the Pennsylvania Automotive Association State High School Technology Competition held at the Hershey Antique Auto Museum. I had the honor of awarding the medals and trophy for their accomplishment last Thursday. In addition to prizes, the students both received scholarships from the Pennsylvania Automotive Foundation, a work bag provided by UniFirst, along with various tools from Napa Auto Parts. So great job to the Dauphin County Technical School team.
Bravo.
Hey. Very good. Thank you for that. Anybody else? Seeing nothing additional, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
If you're planning to announce our next meeting,
Oh, thank you. It will not be on April Fool's Day, but the day after.
right, but Mr. Blaine did omit the date for the authority, so if you would include that, I would appreciate it. Right at the end of the adjournment.
16th,
16th?
April.
Yeah, April 16th.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
is
April
the authority.
16th will be the date of the next authority meeting. Tuesday, April 2nd at 7 o'clock will be the next meeting of the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you.
And now may we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.